All right, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great week and a great start to summer. Today, we're continuing our RBT exam practice question series, where we're going through a series of RBT practice questions and breaking them down together. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. If you're looking for our study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We also have links to all of our products in the comment and descriptions below. Any questions, please shoot me an email. I'm happy to help. Congratulations to all of the RBTs who recently passed. We had quite a few over the past few weeks, which makes us just very, very excited. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in our Sunday shoutouts. Other than that, let's keep working hard, keep studying hard, and get to our questions. Question 1. What type of reinforcement or punishment procedure utilizes escape to increase behavior? So this is more of a higher level reinforcement/punishment question, because we know, or we should know, reinforcement increases behavior and punishment decreases behavior. Very basic stuff. That's one of the first things you learn. We also know positive, we add something, negative, we take it away. But there's also specific instances where we're manipulating behaviors in a way and using that to our advantage. When we utilize escape to increase behavior, okay, we're doing a specific type of reinforcement. Now, increase tells you what? It tells you it's going to be a reinforcement procedure. And if you're going to utilize escape, do you think you're going to be adding something or taking something away? Well, we're going to be removing something. Think about one of the most common examples, giving a child a task or a worksheet, and all they want to do is get away from it. If you remove that worksheet, what happens? Whatever behavior they were engaging in increases. That escape, that negative reinforcement, increases the behavior. The type of reinforcement procedure tied to escape is typically negative reinforcement. We're removing something, we're using escape as the consequence and as the reinforcer to increase the target behavior. Which of the following answer choices describes behavior in the most observable and measurable terms? When we're defining a behavior, and as RBTs, you will be helping define behaviors, sometimes defining behaviors on your own. Most of the time, you're on the front lines, you're the one who sees the client the most, and you typically see the new behaviors. When you see a new behavior, start trying to define it, right? When we define it, though, we need to be observable, we need to be measurable. We're trying to avoid subjective language. We're trying to avoid talking about how we feel. And we're trying to avoid talking about things that have to do with the client's emotional state or the client's disability, right? So we don't say frustration. We don't talk about the autism causing the behavior. No, we only want what was observable and what was measurable. What did we see? What can we measure? In this case, we want the answer choice that describes behavior in observable and measurable terms. A, Chad is watching a baseball game. After his team makes an error, Chad becomes furious and throws his phone against the wall. A is close. A isn't bad, except for Chad becomes furious. Now, Chad threw his phone against the wall, so most people would say, well, Chad was mad, right? But furious, mad, all these words are going to be hard to measure repeatedly. What if Chad rarely has outbursts? Chad is mad all the time, and all of a sudden he had an outburst. What if he's just mad all the time and he only showed it this time? We can't consistently measure this idea of furious, so we don't include it. If the definition was just Chad is watching a baseball game, after his team makes an error, he throws a phone against the wall, that's observable, that's measurable, that's okay. What about B? While playing ping pong, James tells his brother, I'm winning 4-0. Okay. Is it observable? Yes, we can watch James play ping pong. We can watch James tell his brother, I'm winning 4-0. Is it measurable? Sure, because every time we watch James, we can see him do this. We can watch him play ping pong. We can watch him tell his brother something. We can measure that. If you can observe it, you can typically measure it, right? That's why those two things go hand in hand. B is better than A. C, during a math test, Glenn stands up and walks around the room to think about a question on the test. All right, so this is okay up until the part about thinking, right? During a math test, Glenn stands up and walks around the room. Do we know he's thinking? What if he just told us he was thinking, but he wants to escape from the test? And he just told us that he's thinking to get us off his back, right? We can't be sure because we can't observe thinking. And since we can't observe it, we can't measure it. C's no good. And then D, because Billy has a developmental delay, he engages in aggressive behavior in public. This is the big no-no. We never ever see a behavior occur and then attribute it to a disability or a delay or some other type of ailment. Just because the client has autism doesn't cause their behavior, okay? It does us no good to just say, well, he has the delay, he's going to be aggressive. How are we helping them, right? We want to find out what are the antecedents to Billy's behavior in public, right? What is happening right before Billy has these aggressions and what happens right after? What are the observable and measurable things that we can change? So the best definition here is going to be B, because we can observe it, we can measure it. James playing ping pong and telling his brother, I'm winning 4-0. I played golf by myself today. After hitting my third best shot in a row, I slammed the club to the ground. Later on in the round, I hit a best shot and I slammed the club to the ground. Slamming the club is reinforced by what? All right, we have another behavior question. We have another reinforcement question. This time the question tells us it's reinforcement, but it's asking about a specific behavior. It's asking about this slamming the club. And when you get a behavior question, first thing you need to know is what is the behavior, what's the antecedents, what are the consequences? In this case, the first antecedent to slamming the club is hitting a bad shot. Later in the round, again, hit a bad shot, slam the club. So right now we know ABC is hit a bad shot is the antecedent. The response is slam the club. The consequence is the club makes contact with the ground. Maybe it gives you an automatic feeling, right? We just know the behavior continues to happen. It's being reinforced, okay? So now we want to do the easy part first. Is it positive or negative? Well, the antecedent is the bad shot. The response is slamming the club, and the consequence is we're adding the feeling of hitting the ground with our club, right? So it's going to be positive. So we know it's positive reinforcement. Now, is it socially mediated or automatic? And I kind of gave it away a little bit, right? Because what is that other word people sometimes use when talking about automatic reinforcement? A lot of times they want to say sensory, right? Sensory and automatic are used interchangeably as a function. The technical term is automatic, and all automatic means is alone, okay? So if there's nobody around and the behavior is occurring alone, it's going to be automatic. Socially mediated reinforcement or punishment is a second party, right? It's you and somebody else. It's the learner and somebody else. It's socially mediated. In this case, I'm playing by myself. There's nobody around. Nobody is reinforcing me, right? The reinforcement is coming from slamming the club to the ground and hitting the ground, right? This is going to be automatic. It's going to be positive because we're adding this feeling or this sensation or hitting the ground. Reinforcement because the behavior is maintaining or increasing. So slamming the club is reinforced by automatic positive reinforcement. Kind of a tricky question, okay? If you got that one right, good for you, right? If not, go back, review socially mediated versus automatic, and review positive versus negative. Okay, kind of follow up to that question because I get this question a lot. The word sensory is often used interchangeably with what function of behavior? Now, a lot of 40-hour training programs have started to use sensory by itself to describe functions, right? We know our 4 functions: tangible, attention, escape avoidance, and then automatic. Well, automatic and sensory are starting to be used interchangeably. Any good program, okay, is not going to use sensory by itself, right? You can use automatic by itself. We shouldn't use sensory on its own, okay? All automatic means is alone. Automatic doesn't necessarily mean sensory, okay? Now, can they be used interchangeably? Sure. Are they? All the time, right? But we need to know sensory is automatic, automatic is sensory. On the RBT exam, you're almost definitely going to see this word automatic, okay? You need to know what that means. It's one of the functions. It means alone, and it's used interchangeably with sensory. Yesterday, Hillary was driving on the interstate to work. She saw a piece of debris in the road, so she swerved to the right and narrowly avoided hitting the debris. Seeing the piece of debris is the blank for swerving to the right. Behavior question. This time we're not talking about reinforcement and punishment. We're talking about the MOs, the SDs, or prompts, okay? What behavior are we talking about? First thing you ask yourself. Well, we're talking about seeing the piece of the debris in relation to swerving to the right. So let's go find that, right? So Hillary's driving to work on the interstate. She saw the piece of debris. That's the antecedent. Then she swerved to the right. Consequence is avoiding hitting the debris. Okay. Again, Negative reinforcement, right? We take away hitting the debris. Okay, we avoided hitting the debris. Negative reinforcement. Next time Hillary sees a piece of debris, she's going to swerve again. But that's not what the question is asking about. The question is asking about the antecedent this time. So seeing the piece of debris did what? Well, it evoked this behavior in Hillary. It evoked Hillary swerving to the right. Up until that point, Hillary could have done anything she wanted, right? Only in that instance did the debris come into play, right? Was swerving open for reinforcement, okay? When Hillary saw that debris, that was the SD for swerving, because now swerving delivers reinforcement. So since it's an antecedent, right, we know it's not a consequence. It's not a motivating operation because the MO comes before the SD, okay? It's an SD because, one, it evokes the behavior, right? And then it's signaling to Hillary that reinforcement is now available for swerving, okay? It's not a prompt. Prompt follows the SD. That's a very important distinction, right? MO comes before the SD. The SD is what evokes the behavior, and then the prompt follows the SD. All three come before the response, but in that particular order. And of course, it's not the consequence. When Hillary saw the piece of debris, she swerved, narrowly avoided hitting the debris. The debris is the SD. When we teach someone to point out the difference between things a person is wearing, letters of the alphabet, or different types of dogs, what are we teaching? Well, what are these categories? Things a person's wearing, letters of the alphabet, different types of dogs. They don't seem to really have any relation other than being what? Well, they're all stimuli in a group, different types of stimuli though, right? Maybe the person's wearing a sweater or a jacket or a t-shirt. Letters of the alphabet, A, B, C. Different types of dogs, Chihuahua versus Pit Bull, right? If we're teaching them to tell the difference between stimuli, well, what are we teaching? Pretty easy, right? Discrimination, stimulus discrimination, okay? When we teach somebody the skill of being able to tell the difference between different stimuli, such as what a person is wearing, letters, or dogs, we're teaching stimulus discrimination or discrimination. Remember, differentiation is also known as response differentiation. It has to do with responses. When we teach different types of responses, that's differentiation. The same response is occurring each time. We're pointing out the difference, right? The response isn't changing. There's just many different stimuli. We're discriminating between the stimuli. We're not generalizing. All we know is we're in the same little teaching environment, right? Generalization occurs outside the teaching environment. And then maintenance occurs after teaching is done. We're still currently teaching these skills, right? So we're not maintaining yet. We are teaching stimulus discrimination. Telling the difference between all these different things is discriminating. This morning, Ty played video games for 30 minutes. He went to school for 7 hours, came home and played another 60 minutes of video games. He ate dinner for 45 minutes and then played 45 minutes of video games. What was Ty's total duration of playing video games? What measurement system are we using here? What is the question asking? The question is asking about duration. Duration is total time. Total time of warm response, but in this case, we want the total duration. So we want the total times of all of our responses, or all of our targets, right? And our target is video games, playing video games. So first, Ty played video games for 30 minutes. Went to school, 7 hours, came home, played another 60 minutes. Now we have how many minutes? 90. He ate dinner for 45 minutes and played 45 more minutes of video games. 90 plus 45 is 135 minutes. How long did Ty play video games for? 135 minutes. C. Duration is just asking you how long somebody did something. If the question said, what was Ty's duration of playing video games before school? Well, we would just say 30 minutes. But they wanted the total, right? So we had to add up all of our measurements of video games, 60 plus 30 plus 45, bringing us to 135 minutes. This assessment involves manipulating antecedents and consequences to try and determine the actual function of a behavior. This is the least important assessment for an RBT to know. It's not that the assessment is unimportant. It's just RBTs will never do this alone. And if you're assisting a BCBA, you're going to be well trained and well coached. However, you still need to be familiar with it. So our three main assessments, behavior assessments, part of the FBA, indirect, which are interviews and surveys, checklists, things like that. We're not actually observing the kid. Direct, we're actually observing the kid now and taking data, so event recording, narrative recording, ABC recording. And then we have a functional analysis. It's the highest level of assessment where we're actually now manipulating the environment to try to determine the function of behavior. If you want to determine the actual function of a behavior, an indirect assessment is going to be the worst method. In fact, you should never, ever rely only on an indirect assessment to determine function of a behavior. Okay, we need to do some sort of direct assessment as well. Direct assessment's better, but we're not really manipulating things. We're just taking data. In a functional analysis, we're actually manipulating antecedents and consequences. And of course, this is not a preference assessment. We're not identifying like and unlike stimuli. The assessment involving manipulating antecedents and consequences to try and determine the actual function of behavior. See functional analysis. After conducting a multiple stimulus preference assessment with replacement, you determine your client loves toy trucks and dinosaurs. For the next 2 weeks, you reward your client with toy trucks or dinosaurs and record if behavior increased. You're conducting a what? Don't overthink this question, okay? What do we know? We know you already conducted your preference assessment. You conducted a multiple stimulus preference assessment, and you identified preferred stimuli. Question becomes, does a preference assessment identify reinforcers? No, it identifies potential reinforcers. So what do you do next? Well, now you actually use those toy trucks and dinosaurs, the identified stimuli, to reward the client if the behavior increased. So we're saying, hey, are toy trucks and dinosaurs reinforcing? Do they have any effect? If they do, the behavior is going to increase. So if you want to see if your toy trucks and dinosaurs have reinforcing properties, what are you going to do? A reinforcer assessment. And that's what you're conducting here, right? It's not a preference assessment. You already did that. It's not a forced choice preference assessment. You already did your preference assessment. It's not an indirect assessment because you're directly working with the client. It's going to be a simple reinforcer assessment. Hey, these stimuli that the client likes, do they have any effect at all on behavior? Let's find out. Can we use them as reinforcers? Well, if the behavior increases, then yes. If the behavior doesn't change or behavior decreases, then no. Okay, thanks for watching. Please check out rbtexamreview.com for our study materials. Please like and subscribe. When you pass, let us know so we can include you in our shutout. Questions, comments, happy to help. Other than that, work hard, study hard. See you soon.